Hello guys, I am going to try and do a voiceover for the first time I've ever done this because for some reason my video lost sound to it. It might be that new mic I got, I'm not sure, but so I am going to try to do a voiceover and mimic myself. Now how you do that is beyond me. But we're going to give it a good try. Let's see here. Mainly I'm talking about some of the things I've already done to the landscape. And you are going to add some more wispy little dead grasses at the base. I've got myself a little line on my table so I stay in focus and in range of the camera. Using that larger board, I noticed on past videos it kind of got off, out of view. So adding a little bit more wispy grasses at the base, and you can do that using a watered down black. Make it this consistency of Jello. You can also do it with a watered down brown. But now keep in mind, if you use that brown that you used for the ground area, you're going to need to darken that brown so it stands out. So you could add a tad bit of black to that brown. And then that way you have a little bit of a contrast between the ground and the grasses. My palette right now has a watered down black. It has a little bit of the watered down ground color, which was the brown and white. And then I made some berry colors because we're going to add a little bit of berries to some of those grass weeds at the bottom. Now the berry color is made a mixture of brown and red, and it's watered down. And all I did was go through there. I picked, like one piece of blade of grass that's sticking up, and just start using your liner brush, just do a couple of dots here and there on that blade of grass. So it kind of looks like an old berry bush dying off. Just add in some berries here and there. I kind of wish now that I would have used a straight red, so it'd be just a little bit brighter. But it really didn't make sense to my brain to do that because we haven't used red at all on this painting. So to introduce a new color to the painting, I felt like I needed to add the brown that I have been using to that red. It still shows up fairly good. All right, I hope this voiceover is working. Hello, Dee, if you're watching. Hello, Trish. Hello, dear Lisa. Looks like I am going to salvage this tutorial after all. Again, using a watered down black, using your liner brush, twirl off, fill up your brush with paint, and then twirl it off. There you go. Go, Beth, go. Go, Beth, go. And then adding a few more of those crazy and wild weeds at the bottom. You can, with that dark color, you can also just add your berries to those blades of grass that are coming up. And you don't have to cover the whole base, the bottom, with a bunch of berries. It's up to you, but just a few here and there just gives it a little bit more interest. Now I'm using what I call the dirty yellow, which is a yellow color mixed with a little bit of brown and some water. And most likely, if I'm not mistaken, I'm fixing to highlight some of those wheat berries so they show up a little bit better. Well, now isn't that interesting, whatever she's talking about? Oh, sorry guys, I couldn't resist. Hopefully this voiceover thing is going to work, because there's a few hours all in these tutorials. I'd hate to lose them completely. Okay, using the dark brown, going in on the wheat stems, adding some leaves, which the leaves are actually like upside down check marks. The leaves of that wheat stalk actually they hang down. Alright, when you start on the bird, you want to use, if you have available to you, a little small scruffy brush. The reason being is because as you go around the outline of the bird that you drew out with your paintbrush, with your liner brush, you're going to start breaking up that line. And by doing that, in other words, you're not going to paint the bird with just straight strokes. You're going to paint the bird using a little dancing brush. And that way, you don't get a perfect round edge, like to her head or to her body. You'll have it more like it's kind of rough edges, by dancing right next to the line. And it's going to mimic like little tiny feathers. So that's what I'm showing you there. Is I'm using a number 2 round brush that's not in great form at all, and I'm going to use it as a dancing brush or a blending brush. But in this case, we're going to apply the paint to the bird by just pouncing ever so slightly, filling in the area of the black cap that's on its head, and then the white across its face. So there I'm applying the black paint using that little number 2 round scruffy brush and just dancing it on. So it covers the edge where you know the outline with uneven marks or uneven strokes, if that makes sense. Just working on the little black cap on the mama's head. Just tapping the black in, going over the outline by tapping it. That way you have like an irregular line. You don't have something that's a perfect line anymore. Adding black towards the neckline as well, which really these birds, the way they sit, they don't have much of a neck. But you tap in, basically kind of doing a neckline. And I added her nose in a dark gray so it stands out. Her nose is on the right side of her head, as if she's looking over at Papa. And I did that nose a cone shape, a very small cone shape, using a dark gray. Again, it's on the right side of her nose. Right side of her head. Okay, so we have the cap on her head. We have basically a scarf around her neck. It's kind of what it looks like. And then the white across her face. And the shape that's in white across her face is really almost the shape of a leaf. If you look at it, it's just starts out narrow, goes wide, and then almost goes narrow again towards the back of her head. And you may have to do a couple of coats of white there, because what you're doing is you're covering up that background of those clouds and blue and grays. So here I'm just building up the face of the bird with little tapping strokes, basically. Now filling in her body using that blender brush or that tapping brush, dancing brush, filling it up with a little bit of white, and we're just going to tap over her body, tapping up close to that black around her neck. So again, it breaks up that black area to where it's not perfect. It kind of mimics like little tiny feathers. Adding black all around the base of her stomach, her chest area. And again, it may take you a couple of coats to cover up her body because of the grays and white and blue background in the sky. And what I'm talking about there is kind of adding what almost a hint of a feather, her feathers, her wings, excuse me, on the right side and the left side. Right now I'm dancing in, making her a little bit whiter with the white and just dancing in the white color. No strokes, just tapping that white paint on, getting it close to the edge. And there I'm trying to take away from her having basically a neck, you know, where it curves in for your neck area. That really needs to disappear by adding a little bit more black in that area so you don't have that curve. Just barely touch it with a little bit of black. Adding a little bit more white towards the neckline to where it doesn't quite look like she has a neck. Using that liner brush in the back of her head or back of her neck area, adding just a little bit more black, just so that area doesn't dip in as a neckline. I have to say, it's so much easier to do this while I'm painting. To explain what I'm doing after the fact is kind of weird. But I know people do this all the time. Well, at least I've seen some of their videos where they do this. Okay, I am taking that liner brush and I'm making a little bit of a dent area up in that white part, because that's where the eyeball is going to go. Just think of that leaf shape, but then making a dent into it with black paint. You may have to stretch if you're on your phone, you may have to stretch your phone screen so you can see a little closer. But I'm making a slight dent into that white area with using black paint and the liner brush. I'm making a dent so I can put white there, which will be the outside of the eye, and then a black dot almost covering all of that white area of the eye. There's barely a hint of white around her black eye. Using that same liner brush, going in and making a tail. Filling it in with black paint. You could mix a little bit black and brown together. But to make it more interesting, you could put two colors in that tail area. But again, keep in mind, we're going to make it look like a snowy scene once it's all said and done. And that will mean we're going to splatter with white paint at the end. And that is definitely going to end up on the tail area of the feathers, on the birds. So it'll give it more interest. So I guess, in other words, what I'm saying is you don't have to do a lot of detail to that tail feathers. I really do like that sky, though. It turned out very nice. And I do believe I started working on the tail after working on the eye area because the eye area needed to dry a little bit. It's one thing about acrylic paints, guys. You know, you can be working on one area and then by, letting that dry for a few minutes, start working on another area. Basically, your palette's going to have only about 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 colors on it. So you can work all over it. While one part's drying, another part you can be working on. Alright, looks like I am putting in a little bit of a white small dot in the dented area that I did. Let that white dry and then go back and almost fill in that white dot with a black. That's going to be her eyeball. And then you're going to do, just after that black dries, you're just going to do a very slight speck of white on top of that black. That will be the reflection showing in her eye. Just going back over the tail again with black, using that liner brush. I'm explaining there was a big wheat coming up from the base that I had put there, but I decided to make it disappear because it looked like it was growing out of the bird's head. Just didn't look right. So what I did was I used a little bit of that gray that I used on the sky and just went over the wheat berry. Then added a little bit of touch of blue, a little bit of white, until I could get it to mimic what I had done already for the sky. And looking at it right now, it pretty much disappeared. I think I ended up adding a little bit more white to it towards the end. Now, using some of that I think I'm doing that at this point. Just using a little bit of that dirty yellow. Nope, actually, excuse me. I am just adding more white toward that neckline, just doing those little pouncy strokes with the brush. Adding more white to her body. Now grabbing, since that white paint on her body is still wet, I grabbed a little bit of that dirty yellow, and it's going on the side of both sides of her. Then you'll rinse your brush off, dance the white into the yellow, just to blend that yellow out. We just want it slightly showing up. Just using the number 2 dancing brush, scruffy brush, just to blend it out. All right, adding a little bit of white at the base of her, because we're fixing to put just a smidge of that blue down there, just to give it some interest. Very, very little blue. And then using your dancing brush, you're going to dance from the white, or blend from the white. So fill up your brush, tapping on the white area, and work your way towards the blue. We don't want it to be real strong, just a faint amount. So tapping in that blue at the very, very base of her. The white above it is still wet. Rinse your brush off. Make sure you don't have any drips on it. Start tapping in the white area and then tap down to the blue area to begin to blend it out. Then you'll just rinse your brush one more time, and again wipe it off, and then tap in your white area and work your way down to the blue. Each time you do this, it's going to fade that blue a little bit more. If you find that you get too much blue down there, all you have to do is add more white to about the middle, not quite the middle, almost the middle of her stomach area, I guess you could say. And then dance it down into that white, blue area, which is small little pouncing is what you're doing with that brush, just barely tapping all the way down. It's blending the colors together. If you go back and look at one of my short videos that was on, showed 2 different ornaments, a red one and a green one, and it was the joy sign. That one is a great one to practice over and over and over, to learn how to blend several shades together. I'll walk you through how to blend, and this is what we're doing here. Exactly it, blending 2 colors together. Y'all would appreciate this. One of my sweet granddaughters came by yesterday with her daughter, my great-granddaughter, and we were visiting for a while. And the Chickadee's painting was sitting on my work surface, and which is right now in my dining room on my big table. And she walked by and she said, "Gran, those look like really nice penguins." Of course, her mother went to correct her. "Those are not penguins." I said, "Oh, thank you, honey. I appreciate your compliment." Oh, it was hilarious. Oh, I remember now. I was explaining how you can clean those brushes. If you get, let's say you get in a big hurry and you sat down a brush that was full of paint and, walked away and, now it's dried, you can take rubbing alcohol, like the 70% rubbing alcohol, and rub on the brush, on the hairs, for a few minutes. Doesn't take long, maybe a few seconds actually, and then it begins to dissolve it. And then just use dish soap, plain old dish soap, and some water, and then clean that brush, and you're good to go. If you have, like, let's say your 1-inch brush is full of paint, now that one you can actually sit in a cup, bristles or hairs down at the base, towards the base of the cup. Sit it inside a cup and then pour a little bit of the rubbing alcohol in that cup and let that brush soak for a little bit. And then you can go in there and break up all that dry paint and then use again soap and water to wash it. All I'm doing here is taking that liner brush and going into my wet black paint and just tapping ever so slightly on the edge of that bird. And I'm using the tapping motion, not strokes of paint, but tapping ever so slightly. That way it breaks up that line as well as looks like mimics very, very, very tiny little feathers. I'm going all the way around the bird, doing that very, very fine tapping motion, using the black paint and using a liner brush. Just tapping slightly, again, to remove the perfect outline look. We just want it to be irregular all the way around, so it kind of mimics feathers. Boy, I like that sky. All right, we're adding a little extra black using that liner brush to the left side of her and going a little off the shape of her, just a little bit going off towards the left. That way it kind of, again, mimics her wings. The wings are really very faint in this painting for all three of the birds. Just give them a little something. Just going off just a smidge away from the outline of it. And again, if you're on your cell phone, you'll have to stretch out the picture so you can see. If I'm not mistaken, I probably added the little white reflection to the black eyeball. And the only reason that black eyeball is going to show up is if you do that first, a little white circle first. Adding more water to my black paint. Yeah, and this Texas heat and all my fans I've got going on, my paint dries out pretty quick. But I've said it before and it's worth saying again. If you're working on something on your project and it takes a lot of effort to get something to paint it in, then you don't have to go through all that. Just add a little bit of water to that paint and it will cause that paint to flow. Alright, using that black paint, I'm again breaking up the area, that leaf shape area on the side of her face of the bird. Just barely tapping, coming from the black area to the white area. I don't want to lose that shape of that white on the side of her face, but I don't want a perfect outline. So we're just tapping along the shape just to break it up some. Same thing around the neck area. Just little tapping motions with your paint and your liner brush. Now there are a whole lot of different kinds of brushes out there. There's fan brushes, of course, and filberts, and angle brushes. Oh my goodness, there's so many different shape brushes. Out of my videos, you see what I use the most. A liner brush, a round brush. I use the filbert when I'm blending like big clouds in the background. A number 1 inch, it's called a wash brush. My 1 inch brush that I do the backgrounds with too. I don't, outside of the liner brushes and the round brushes, those two I use the absolute most of. Even in some of my larger paintings. Different folks just get real comfortable with certain brushes and you make it happen with that particular brush. Looks like I'm going into that red berry mixture, which is a little bit of red and a little bit of brown, adding some water to it with my little stir brush. All we're going to do is just barely tap on some of those grasses. Just barely tap at the top of one. Kind of similar to what you did when you created the wheat. A few red dots on one side, a few red dots on the other side of that blade of grass. Maybe a couple of them towards the top. Almost looks like an old cluster of winter berries showing up. Just adding a few more of those red berries down to the right side of the project, on top of some of those blades of grass, or stems they could be. grabbing a little bit of white and that dirty yellow. Looks like I'm going to highlight some more of those wheat berries just so they stand out a little bit more. Just touching a few of those little wheat berries up there. Not all of them, just a few. It's funny how it works when you build a painting, because when you put highlights on just a few things, it stands out so much better than if you put highlight on everything. I feel like it makes the painting come alive. I think we're fixing to start putting some snow on the wire, on the barbed wire. Yes. Using that liner brush. And you're just tapping. Again, that same motion. No strokes. Just tap that white paint on top of the wire. And you're going to go up and down in some areas, just small little amounts, kind of like a mountain range. You know how a mountain range, the mountains up and then down to the valley and up and down to the valley. And that's kind of what you're doing all the way across that wire. Some areas you're going to skip. Some areas you're going to do the snow on the wire. And you can see now how it really wakes that wire up more, having that white snow up there. This is where that wire that's in front of the post is going to really show up better now by adding little taps of white on top of the wire. Just tap, tap, tap. And then that's going to mimic the snow there. Yep, that looks so much better. Filling the brush up, the liner brush, and you're tapping that white paint along that top of that wire. And you don't have to go all the way down with it. Just do sections down the wire. Unless you want to, and that's okay. Again, I reiterate, when you're putting a painting together, no matter how big it is or small, you're building. You're literally building a project. And, I can get some good music on and a good teacher on and start working on a project and get totally lost. And it is honestly awesome. I really, really enjoy it. I have been enjoying it since, let's see, 1990 to 91 is when I really fervently started watching Bob Ross. Okay, still adding more snow, little tiny snow drifts on top of the barbed wire, here and there. One of the neatest things on the Bob Ross thing is that back in that day we only had a VCR, and sometimes I'd rent his tapes at the Blockbuster. I wonder if any of y'all remember that place. And Or was it Blockbuster? Maybe, I don't even know if Blockbuster was out yet. I think they were. Anyway, I would grab those tapes and I'd get the kids to school, and oh my goodness. And my husband would be at work, and I didn't have to work at the time. Praise God. That was an awesome time. And man, I'd get home to beat the band just as fast as I could, pop Bob Ross in, set my work table in front of the TV, had the remote handy. So everything he did, I could pause and then do it and then go back and watch him again. And honestly, I had no clue how to paint, but I was so determined to learn. Here I am adding on top of the post a little bit of that snow, again using nothing but the tapping motion. Tap, tap, tap. I did take a paint class one time, and actually I had taken 2 classes of oil painting. Oh, I was so scared. It was silly of me. But I was nervous as all get out. But I taught paint classes myself, and for several years at a art mall. And some of those folks that would come to my class, they were very, very nervous. So, anyway. But yeah, it was silly of me to be so nervous. But I had to stop those classes. My daughter was, she was having a hard time that year, being sick quite often. And I was missing classes. Finally, I just dropped out. Thought, okay, I'll try again the following year. Never did. I just started getting books and magazines. And back in the day, we used to have a lot of how-to paint magazines. And we didn't have YouTube, that's for sure. And I would start practicing, watching the VCR tapes. And finally, I got a little bit better. All right, watering down the white paint. I bet we're fixing to put the base on down where all the little weeds are. Grabbing that number 5 round brush, if I'm not mistaken. If she can find it. Oh, she found it. All right, yes. Now this is like a snowdrift at the base. It's that up and down motion. Nothing straight, perfect. Just like little piles up of snow, and then skinny area, and then a kind of a fat area, and then a skinny area. Now you have to go back over it. Once it dries the first coat, when you go all the way down, you'll go back over it again to make sure that white looks pure white down there and it covers that background. But again, it's just a very small amount that you're putting down. Boy, I hope this is recording. Looks like it is. Yep. And again, using that tapping motion, I'm building up on some of those little snow heaps or piles. And as I work my way down to the end of the board. That's a cute little project. Now that I've been sitting here for a couple hours staring at it, it's not bad. I sure hope y'all are having a good time with it. Well, maybe it's not been a couple hours. Feels like it, though. Maybe more closer to an hour. Again, just using that tapping motion, adding snow to the base. And once we get all the way down to the end, I'll start again and cover, if I'm not mistaken, and cover up where I started, putting a second coat on that snow. So it does several things, but one, you get good coverage. You don't see the base of all the weeds and the wheat being start white. It really does mimic snow. Then it also kind of pushes back. It pushes back the post a little bit, pushes back all the grassy area a little. Now, once I get through going through that, if I'm not mistaken, the next thing will be we're going to add some snowballs. Yes, snowballs. Big old balls of snow flying through the air. Snowflakes. I'll show you how to do some quick snowflakes. They're not great detail. And then we'll splatter it with watered down white and using a toothbrush. Then it looks like a nice snowy day. Yeah, I'm covering up my thumbnail with a piece of tape because when I rub across the bristles of the toothbrush, I don't want a bunch of paint in my nail. It takes too long to get it out. I'm just tapping that water. That paint is not completely watered down, guys. It's more of the consistency of a loose gravy. It's not a thick gravy and it's not a jello. And then tap it off first a couple of times before you take your thumbnail and rub against those bristles pointing down towards your project. And then just run your thumb several times over, and before you know it, that paint just comes flying off. So you end up with little white splatters all over the black area of the birds, their tail, over the post, up in the sky, and it looks great. Speaking of looks, I really would like to see y'all's projects. Please feel free to post in your comments. I think you can post pictures. I'm not sure. If you can't, maybe you can email me some. You can email me at Gran, that's Gran, GranArt 505 at gmail.com. Again, that's Gran, Gran as in no, art, ART, 505 at gmail.com. Okay, I think we're getting close to where you can sign your work and call it done. Yeah, I'm using the handle of the brush to dip into the white paint and just put a few dots everywhere. Real random, and not a whole lot, just a few here and there. Then you can go back with your liner brush, and before those little dots dry, you're going to crisscross across one of those dots. You're basically doing an X and then an extra line to mimic a snowflake. Yeah, when you go to do that, though, be careful your hand's not hitting on one of the other dots. So you just do an X and then do a line through the middle of the X. And that kind of mimics a snowflake. And of course, you don't have to put all those dots on there or make snowflakes. If you like your painting where it was, I would leave it at that. To add a little bit more interest, you can do that though. Snowflakes, snowballs, piles of snow. Yes, I'm dreaming of snow right now, guys. It's 102 in Texas. I think it's going to be 102 today. When I went out a little bit ago, before I sat down to do this, I think it was sitting at 98. All right, I'm going into that red-brown mixture, which is the berry mixture, making sure it's wet, Jello consistency. Using that liner brush, I'm signing my work. I usually just put my initials and the year. And I didn't start applying the year until just probably about 10 years ago. Because I ran across some work that I had done that I was commissioned to do, artwork that people had hanging in their house. And that was kind of cool to find. But, and I noticed that I had signed my work and didn't put the year. I always want to know what year I made it. So I got in that habit of doing it. And one of the things that I didn't say on here you could do is add a little bit more like a medium gray color to that sky, just to give it a little bit more of that, not gloomy cold day, but just to make it a little bit more of a cold day, a hazy looking day. I think that's going to be it. I hope y'all have a good day.